Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this another exciting episode of RoadTripja, the heartbeat of Jamaica's roads. This is your excursion extraordinaire and guide, Dr. A. This is just to bring your attention that we are currently live on the RoadTripja podcast. Yes, a lot of things has been happening in Jamaica in the month of January 2023. But we're going to be speaking a little about it, giving you context to the pretext that has been presented to us. And yes, we're going to be first discussing the SSL saga and the money that got missing or misplaced, misdirected, whatever it want to be called, corporate maleficent, whatever they want to term it as. We will be getting into the meat of the matter, as we'll be trying to dissect and do some forensic analysis based on the information that we have been presented to see if this information is actually true and credible. If that is something you're interested in, stick around as we get into the road trip show. I know the question that may be provoking your thoughts at this time is the information that we have been receiving true and accurate. But what I'm going to share with you is not going to be a surprise to many of you, because I know that our subscribers are well-thinking individuals and can critically analyze situation to see the validity and assess and know the truth of what is happening. Based on what we have been presented by the news media, which have been sponsored in some regards in the past or currently by the SSL team, the Stocks and Securities Limited team, which is a brokerage firm in Jamaica, we understand that there are ties to political affiliations. Hence, the work of justice is slow in coming. But never fear, we are here to get to the meat of the matter, to present our perspective. And by no means will this be an exhaustive analysis, but take it for what it is. The first thing that I want to present to you is that an individual, a female, was indicated to have been the perpetrator of the nefarious activities that took place. However, I want to be very mindful that we will not be mentioning her name, because she was a sprot. She was not the person in charge of the whole operation. So her testimony to me comes off quite compromising. And not that it is not accurate or it is not true, it's just that it baffles me that that could ever happen in a position or portfolio of that nature and magnitude. The document outlined the type of methodologies that she used in order to deceive individuals. However, I am not buying that story. And what we'll come to realize is that all the people that she allegedly had perpetrated ill activities on their account does not include all the persons involved. Yes, we know that our sprint legend allegedly also lost a portion of his nest egg. It is stated that he should have had $12 million. However, that is not the case. It was about $12,000 that he had. So they removed a few of the zeros in his account, maybe so that he wouldn't realize that the changes that had taken place. What I want you to understand is that our sprint legend had invested his money for over a 14 years, I think from 2008 period, based on what we have been informed. And his money that was initially invested was approximately $6 million US. And we see that over time, his $6 million US would have doubled to $12 million. I want you to see the power of investing taking place. So that there happened. What I also want you to realize is that the lady, we will not focus on her because we know how the system is designed. And there is a high probability, based on my preliminary analysis, that she is actually the core perpetrator of these acts. But what she has done is reveal some shortfalls and shortcomings of the institution in totality. But this is what I'm going to say. The persons who are actually responsible are the persons who are the head of the company, not the person at the bottom, because corruption does not move from the bottom up. Corruption moves from the top down. So if a government is corrupt, then the people in the parliament will be corrupt, the people, the councillors will be corrupt, and the country itself will be corrupt because the corruption will be tolerated. So if this activity was facilitated, it could not have been by her own will. It had to be by the endorsement of leadership. So the CEO needs to go. The CFO has to go. The COO, the Chief Operating Officer, has to go. The diversity officer, that officer needs to go. And the management team, that needs to be dissolved. But if you look at the paper trail, you'll realize something happened. Most of the persons who entered the company had pleasure with the company, because that seems that what it was. It was like an orgiastic exercise where you take people money, utilize it for your personal development, starting your own companies outside of the company that you are currently in charge of managing. So the fiduciary duty was not being upheld, and as such, other persons' benefits were compromised because of selfish intention. So this here is presenting us the idea of greed that was pivotal in this market. But I want our listeners to know and understand that this is not a new situation. We had the old lynk situation, we had the cash plus situation. Let us not, with a long shot, forget the Finsaga saga. Yes, that saga, we still remember it and still are feeling the pinch of those indiscretions exercised. The big scandal with the Trafigura situation. So we have a lot of things in the financial sector that has taken place in the past, and this will not be the last time that it happens. So let us examine now to see if our regulators were doing due diligence. Yes, it was indicated that in about 2013, this company had been flagged. 2017, there was another flagging of non-compliance, non-conformities. And even in 2020, there were some inconsistencies and there was some challenges with this company. However, the FSC, Financial Services Commission, still allowed them to practice with full autonomy of individuals' funds and money, not informing the investors. That is why I'm going to implore anyone listening to this, whether you're in Jamaica, you're in the United States, you're in Canada, wherever in the world you are, you could be in Trinidad and Tobago, you could be in Guyana, wherever it is that you're listening to this from. Please note that you have to understand how to read a balance sheet. You have to understand how to allow your money to work for you. And in the best interest, I don't think that you should have any institution controlling all your funds. That is a recipe for disaster. And you cannot have all your money in one institution. You have to remember how much protection you are getting based on the amount of money that you have. So once you almost reach a particular threshold, then you know you have to cut your money and put it somewhere else. So those are just some safeguards that you can take in order to mitigate loss. And this process is called diversification, so that you can absorb some of the inefficiencies in the market without being crumbled under the pressure. Now, let us move into the government officials. It has been brought to our knowledge that a few government officials had money tied up into this company, even though some may have taken out their money in 2022. And other government entities like the NHT, the Agricultural Society, they have money in SSL. And this here is a big cause for concern. So NHT takes our money, not a voluntary contribution. They take it mandatory because once you're working as a PAYE, these deductions are taken out, and that was placed in this fund, I'm assuming for investment purposes. Whether you desired for it to be invest your funds to be invested or not, they decide that it would be in the best interest to invest your funds. Anyway, that's another story. We're not going to get into that. So, a few government entities had money in this non-compliant organization. So it means that the government entities were not doing their fiduciary duty in recognizing that their role in funds allocation is to ensure that they are going in institutions which are compliant not only with tax regulation but compliant in relation to having everything in good working order, companies that can be recommended. So once a company falls out of alignment with the Financial Services Commission, then funds, whatever is tied up in those companies, needs to be withdrawn or removed if these inconsistencies and non-compliances are not resolved. So that is just something that I want you to bear in mind as we delve a little bit deeper. The current status of the company and the revelation that we're seeing is that the organization wanted to do a liquidation of the assets so that they could get some money out of the company prior to it going into bankruptcy. But what we are not seeing at the forefront is that money was already being funneled through that company. But if you check the balance sheet, if you check the money trail, then you'll realize that there was a lot of non-compliance. There were accounting practices which were basically manipulation, numeric manipulations taking place, but nobody is talking about that. It is said that the government has called in the FBI to assist in this investigation, and for some strange reason, I am not sure why they called in the FBI, but they did call in the FBI and they announced it publicly. However, the individuals who have been accused of organizing this whole company, of managing this whole company, they are still free and not yet under investigation based on what we have been related so far. But that is another story. So there's a lot of things taking place. It was indicated also that the FSC had sent information to the Minister of Finance, Dr. Honorable Nigel Clark, about non-compliances of other companies here in Jamaica that are investment firms, and no notation of receipt was indicated until this situation erupted. So that there is another story that needs to be examined thoroughly. So let us go back to this situation. This is not the first time that money has gone missing. If there is anyone in the chat right now who has ever invested in Jamaica and your money has never gone missing, if it's even a small portion has never gone missing, let me see you write a comment in the chat. Yes, but if you don't catch it, then the problem cannot be resolved. Sometimes they say it's a computer glitch. Sometimes they come up with another story and they ask for forgiveness, etc. You give them forgiveness, but other things are taking place in the background. So this is a situation in which it is considered a fraud. But the individual who is at the forefront of this situation is a female. And we're realizing that this is not uncommon. We're only seeing the females being prominent when it comes on to these fraud cases. When other banks and financial institutions have their situation, we are seeing them coming up, and we're seeing the females in the limelight. So a lot of things are taking place, and we are truly saddened by the direction of the trust and confidence that are taking place in our current economy. So you may be asking, so what should I do? Is it to indicate to me that we should stop trusting the financial sector in Jamaica? I am not going to tell anyone not to trust the financial sector. You may have a few bad apples, yes, in the financial sector, but I'm not saying that we should distrust the financial sector. What I'm saying to you, though, is that you have to be cautious about where you put your money. And yes, we understand that had it been someone who stole mangoes or stole maybe some food to eat, then that person would have already been in prison. But when it comes on to the Jamaican society and the Jamaican law, you'll realize that you live in two different Jamaica. The crimes that are targeted are the low-level crimes and low-level criminals. However, people who are doing financial espionage, those persons are treated with a little bit more dignity, and their prestige and integrity is maintained, because the people who are actually at the head of this organization needs to be held accountable. And as such, we are requiring that our government in Jamaica at this very time, this very moment, will sit down and discuss the matter and have us come to a speedy resolution, so that those who have been impacted will be able to be refunded their earned money and their earned interest. The idea of this situation was presented to us because a prominent Jamaican was involved. However, this situation was not unique. This situation has already been going on. Other persons have experiences their money being missing, but because they didn't have the amount of prominence and prestige as the Usain Bolt, then the information didn't reach to the public. So now that the information is in the public and we're seeing how the financial institutions operate, this gives us as a Jamaicans an opportunity to reposition and realign, as in having principles in place so that we can safeguard for non-compliance, negligence, and put measures of protection not only for the companies but for the persons who are affected by the indiscretions of the company. And I don't think that we should facilitate any bailout of this company, because normally what the government does is that they bail out companies after they have exercised indiscretions, and the people still suffer. When we had the incursion that took place, the persons who actually, the lawyers, made more money than the amount of money that each individual got who actually experienced the atrocities. So this here is a play on money, and in this situation, other persons are actually making money, but you have to decide which leg of the field you're going to be playing on. This is where we're going to have to put a pause to our discussion here about the SSL saga and the Usain Bolt money runaway experience. So I hope that this had presented some perspective for you to assess and analyze, and indicate in the comments so that we can have an idea as to what you're thinking. We indicated first that the lady who has been the prominent face is a scapegoat. The methodologies that she indicated was very low, and it indicates that there was no measure of control in the organization, providing that those methods could have worked, which we are not believing. And the government and the leadership of the company, they need to be held accountable for the persons whose money had been missing. The fiduciary duty of the organization was not maintained. And all those persons who started companies with the people's money, those monies need to be returned. And their companies, whatever companies, whether it's in LLC, whatever it is, it needs to be liquidated, so that these individuals who have been impacted and affected can be replenished and be given the money that they so deserve. Indiscretion that has been exercised to persons who were planning for their future. Can you imagine? You're planning for your future and someone is saying, suffer a little, suffer a little. But after you are suffering, they are living these lavish lifestyle, driving these Benz, these Mercedes, these Audis, these luxury vehicles, these Porsches. They're living in these mansions, and you are living in a matches box. But you are the ones paying for the gas, paying for their insurance, paying for their lifestyle. How would you feel? Knowing that you were sacrificing for someone else to reap the rewards of the sacrifice that you have made. This is where we're going to be ending it here on RoadTripja, the podcast. This is Dr. A.